Good morning. Today is Wednesday, the 17th day of Elul, which makes it tonight is the 18th day. 18th Chai Elul is a very, very special day, the birthday of both the Baal Shem Tov and the founder of Hasidus and the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, the founder of the Chabad Hasidus, the author of the Tanya that we learn every day. And so we're going to have a big celebration tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. at the Chabad. We'll have Rabbi Jelen speaking, so everyone is invited to join us, 1315 Avenue Y. So we begin today the letter 15 of the Igeret Hakodesh, the holy letters of the Alter Rebbe. And this letter is different than most of the letters. As you remember, most of the letters talk about tzedakah, many different aspects of tzedakah. We discovered a lot of depth behind the meaning of the charity. And this letter doesn't talk about tzedakah, but it's a very fundamental concept in Hasidus and Kabbalah. It's rather a lengthy letter. It'll take a few days to finish it. And it's important to follow these few classes, as this is a very fundamental concept in Hasidus. And it's talking about understanding the spheres, the attributes of God, the attributes that Hashem created the world with. And you may ask, why is it important to know? Many people went through life without knowing it, and they served Hashem, and they prayed, and they studied Torah without knowing much about them. However, the Shila Kodesh says, the Holy Shila says that if people were not aware of this, then it's fine. But once people are aware of this, and if you ignore it, then that's a problem. And the Alter Rebbe explains to us that by understanding these concepts, the spheres, the attributes of God, it will allow us to connect to Hashem and to serve Hashem more with Yirat Hashem, fear of God and love of Hashem. And before the Alter Rebbe goes to explain these 10 Sefiros, he gives us two introductions. One introduction is explaining why and how can we relate to this in the first place. If the Sefiros, if the attributes of God is all godly, all spiritual, talking about different worlds, then how can we relate to this? And that the Alter Rebbe is going to say that really, all of it, all of these attributes, we find it within ourselves. He's going to explain why we find it in ourselves, in us humans. And that means that when we can look inside ourselves, we can see God's attributes. And the second introduction is to do just that, go to the other extreme. That people should not think that being that you can see all of this in us, in humans, that means we're going to humanize those attributes. And in a sense, this is part of the danger of people who are studying the Kabbalah, is that it can lead to a point that we humanize God, so to speak. In the Kabbalah, we describe God. You have the right side, the left side, the hand, the feet, and all kind of this description that we give. In a sense, they say this is a difference between the Hasidus and the Kabbalah. In Kabbalah, you study Kabbalah, you get God in human terms. So in a way, humanizing God. So Chas v'shalom. Hasidus does the opposite. Hasidus takes humans and makes it godly. To understand that in the human, you have all of these godly powers. And therefore, we approach our own ourselves in a whole different level. We see the depth of what the neshama is. And that inspires us and gives us the appreciation of reaching into deeper levels. So let's start this chapter, and it's important to follow through this chapter, letter 15 in the Igeret Hakodesh. So I'm going to look inside. So the Alter Rebbe begins lahavin mashal melitza divrei chachamim vechudaisam beinyan hasfiris. To understand the allegory and metaphor, the words of the wise and their riddles with respect to the Sephiris. The Sephiris is God's attributes. We need to understand the metaphors and the riddles. Generally, you'd say they were talking about the metaphors, referring to the written law. The written law, whatever is written in the written law, is like a metaphor talking about higher things. The riddles is more talking about the oral law, the words of the wise, the riddles. That sometimes to study the Talmud, you can't just sit and relax and study it like you're reading a novel. You have to pay a lot of attention, and there's like riddles. So to understand those words of our sages regarding the sephiros, the attributes, says the Alter Rebbe, it is known throughout the land from the mouth of heavenly saints. May their soul rest in heaven, in Eden. So this enabling us to somewhat comprehend the verse. It says a verse in Job, in Eov, and from my flesh I shall behold God. What does that mean? The simple meaning of this verse, you know that Eov, Job, went through a lot of sufferings. So simply what he said was, for my flesh, from what I go, from the experiences that I saw in my flesh, I see God. I see God doing those things. So he saw the hand of God in everything what happens to him. Chassidus takes this verse deeper and explains that what it means, from my flesh I shall see God, I shall behold God, means that by understanding the human condition, understanding everything from my flesh, I see the godliness, that God created us in his image. And therefore, within the human condition, you can see the godly attributes as shall be explained. Shakavonahi lahavin ktsas lekuso yizborech min nefesh amelubeshes bibsar adam. Says that this verse speaks of a partial understanding of God's blessed divinity from a consideration of the soul, which is vested in the flesh of man. When you think about the soul and you understand as much as you can understand about the soul, we're not talking about the godly soul, we're talking about the animating soul. Godly soul is something that you cannot understand, it's beyond, it's godly. But the animating soul that is invested in the human flesh, when you see this, you can see also, and you can understand a little bit of the godliness, the attributes of God. And this correspondence between the soul and its creator accords with the teaching of our soul, of blessed memory, and the verse, give praise my soul to God. There the Talmud compares that many things, the 5 things, just like the soul fills the body, so too Hashem fills the world, and five different things. Just as the Holy One, blessed be He, permeates the world, so does the body, so does the soul permeate the body. Now, when we're talking about the soul and being, that the soul was created in a different way than any other creation. As mentioned earlier in the Tanya, any creation was created with the words of Hashem. Hashem said, "Let there be light," and it was light, and so on. But when it comes to the soul, it says God blew a soul into his nostrils. This corresponds likewise, accords with the teaching of the Zohar and the verse, and he blew into his nostrils a soul of life. Says the Zohar, "Man denofach mitoichei nofach." He who blows from within. Meaning that this represents the creation of the soul, the blowing the soul into the body represents a more inward power of Hashem, from the innermost part of Hashem that is invested in Adam. Says the Alter Rebbe. Now, it does not make a difference. Of course, this verse is talking about Adam. Adam Arishon, Adam and Eve were created, they were handmade from Hashem. And it says about Adam that Hashem blew into his nostrils a soul of life. But who says this is also true to the rest of us? Says the Alter Rebbe that this doesn't matter what level of neshama you have. There's many different levels of souls. Some souls come from a higher level, some souls come from a lower level. And in a way, it's just like the body, which every part of the body is connected with our soul, with life. We have the heart, we have the brain, we have every organ that we have. We have also the nails, the hair, the nails, even though certainly there is a different level of life in the brain than there is in the nails. The nails is you don't feel pain when you cut it, and then it's so far, so distant from its roots, from the source of life. Nevertheless, you have the same essence of life is in all. The same DNA is in the nails, in every part of us. So the same thing it says when it comes to souls of man. Even the lowest of the lowest is all connected with the top of the top, with the very top, with the very essence of the soul. That's what it says, Vafilu nefesh de asiya. Even the soul which is called nefesh, a soul of the lowest grade, of asiya. Asiya is the lowest of the four worlds, as you remember. You have Atzilus, Beriya, Yetzira, Asiya. So even the lowest part, the nefesh, of the lowest world, it is derived from the union of Za, the Ze'er Ampin, which represents the 6 midos, the emotive attributes, and Nukva. The Nukva is the feminine attribute it's called Malchus of Asiya. What does that mean? Just like the human's creation of a child comes from a union of male and female, the same thing is in the spiritual levels. There is a union of the attributes, is the emotive attributes with the feminine attributes, which is called Malchus, and that brings about and creates the souls. So the soul of Asiya comes from the union of Ze'er Ampin, the emotive attributes and the feminine attributes of the world of Asiya. And the union of their moichin. The moichin means the intellect, the chachma and bina. These are the chaya and neshama. Chaya represents the chachma, neshama represents the bina, the wisdom and understanding. The zeir ampin v'nukva. from these two levels of Ze'er Anpin and Nukva. She'machoraim the Kelim, the Ze'er Anpin, the Nukva, the Atzilus. And these in turn are external aspects of the Kelim of Zah and Nukva of Atzilus. The Kelim means the vessels. Now, what is he saying? He's saying basically that even the lowest level, ultimately, if you go back to its roots and the roots of the roots, and the root of the roots, you always lead to the very top. So the very DNA that is in the bottom that comes from the top. Shem Elokus Mamash, the world of Atzilus, the Kelim of Atzilus, the vessels of the world of Atzilus, they are truly divine. Shebesoicham Meir Oyer Ein Seif Baruch Hu Melubash Veganus V'Chachma V'Atzilus. For in them radiates the infinite Ein Seif light, which is vested and concealed in the Chachma of Atzilus. The Iyu V'Gamoy Chad B'Atzilus. And he, the infinite Ein Sof light, and the Kelim, the vessels, are one in Atzilus. So what is he saying? That the same thing that the person understands, just like when the neshama comes from the very top, and ultimately it's connected with the very essence of Hashem. Ve'al kein gam benishmas ha'odam meir oyer ein soif baruch hu. And therefore, he says, since the soul derives from these sephiros, it follows that the infinite Ein Sof light radiates in the soul of man as well. It's vested and concealed in the light of its chachma in order to animate man. And from it, from the soul of man, man is enabled to understand something of the supernal sephiros. For they all radiate in his soul, which comprises them. So the Alter Rebbe is teaching us here to understand that we can do it, we can achieve. And why can we achieve it? Because it's really in us. Because when we're talking about the spheres, the attributes of Hashem, in the attributes of Hashem, it says in one of the Kabbalistic books, Chabad of Sheepshead Bay, Rabbi Meir Eben Gabai, he was a sage from the time of the Inquisition, and he writes about the question whether is God's powers, is it limited or is it unlimited? When I ask this question, I always get the answer, of course it's unlimited. But he explains, the Igeret Hakodesh explains that if you say he's unlimited, then you're limiting God. Because you're saying that he's limited by not having limits. And therefore he explains that God does not have any limits. He's not limited by having limits, by not having limits. So just like he has the koach, you see the power of God, the infinite light of God in the unlimited light, you see his infinity by having the limits. Meaning, we're talking about when Hashem animating the world through the attributes. So those attributes are both limited and unlimited. They're limited, that we say they're 10, they're not 9, they're not 11. They're limited in the form that each attribute represents a different aspect. But then, in the same time, we're saying that those attributes, they have the vessel and the light. The vessel, just like using, for example, you have a cup that holds water. So the cup is the vessel, and the water, let's say, is the light. So if you have, let's say, a cup which is a colored cup, has a red color, and you're putting plain water. Now, when you look in the cup, you look in the water, through the cup, you see the water has a red color. It's red water. But obviously, the water is not limited. It's colorless. So the same thing you have in the attributes of Hashem, you have the vessels, which is a godly form of limiting the energy, the light that comes in certain ways, a light that comes in form of emotions, a light that comes in form of a different type of emotions, whether it's kindness, severity, light, and the energy of light that comes in form of wisdom and intellect, and so on and so forth. But within them, the light itself is not limited. It is a concept that needs much more explanations. And in these next few days, we will, Be'ezrat Hashem, God willing, continue and give as much explanation as we can. And again, all of this helps us. And when we see, as the Alter Rebbe says in today's shir, that when we see that we have these attributes in us, mi besari echazeh Elokah, that we see in us, we have these, because we have this godly soul in us, and it doesn't matter how, from whatever level our neshama comes, even simple people, when the soul comes from, ultimately it's connected with the very, very top, with the very essence of Hashem, that itself gives us a closeness to understand and to appreciate the greatness of Hashem. And that helps us in serving God with ahava, with yira, serving God with awe, the awesomeness of Hashem, and the love to Hashem, understanding everything, how we are all connected. This is the end of today's shir. Thank you so much for joining today. And make sure to share this. Have a wonderful day. All the best.